Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the North East Cambridge Community Forum on the 5th of October 2022. My name's Stephen Kelly. I'm the Joint Director of Planning, and my job today is to chair this forum. We've got a number of presentations today. The purpose of the forum is to allow information to be exchanged, to provide updates, and also for a chance for people to understand who and in what way various agents and people are involved in working on North East Cambridge and bringing forward for proposals. We have some people who are attending who've been engaged with the development of the site and the area for a long time, but also those who will have perhaps less knowledge. Some of you will have less knowledge about the proposals, and therefore this meeting is presented not as a forensic examination of all of the issues, so I'm sorry if we can't answer all of your questions, but actually to provide a bit of an overview and to allow improved understanding, but also hopefully to stimulate questions that might need to take place or indeed outside of this meeting. In the first instance, we will have officers from across the local authorities here, from Community Services team, the Planning Service, County Council, and at times the Greater Cambridge Partnership. But I also am conscious there will be some elected councillors here, and for the benefit of all the people on the forum, if you are an elected councillor and you could raise your hand if you'd like to have your presence known, I'm happy to have you introduce yourselves. Just looking to see if anybody is raising their hand. Two people have raised their hands. Bear with me second, and I will 5 people. So I'm just looking down my very long list to try and help
I've become Stephen Kelly, I think. I don't quite know how.
That's interesting.
I'll rename myself Stephen.
Can I ask Councillor Smart to introduce themselves? Thank you. I'll start with a list and then we'll see how we go. Councillor Smart, are you able to unmute yourself? Thank you.
I think I am now, yeah.
That's right.
Okay, so I'm Martin Smart. I'm a councillor in King's Hedges ward in Cambridge. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. Councillor Dr. Hawkins.
Good evening. Thank you, Stephen. Toomey Hawkins. I'm the local member for Caldycourt Ward in South Cambs, and also the lead cabinet member for Planning Policy and Development Management of the Greater Cambridgeshire Planning Service. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Hello, Stephen. It's Councillor Anna Bradnam from Milton and Waterbeach Ward. So I'm a neighbour to the North East Cambridge development. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Charles Jones.
Good afternoon. Yes, Charles Jones, Fenderton Parish Council.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Matt Howard.
Hi there, Matthew Howard, Abbey Ward for the Green Party.
Thank you. And Councillor David Yandell.
I'm not a councillor.
Ah, okay.
I'm the acting chairman of Save Honey Hill, which is opposed to the moving of the sewage.
Okay. Thank you, David. Sorry, that's my mistake. Councillor Hoffman.
Thank you. Carla Hoffman, Fen Ditton and Fulbourn Ward Councillor.
Right. Thank you very much, everybody. So the meeting has got a series of presentations this evening from various stakeholders. Following each presentation, there will be space and time set aside for a short question answer session on that topic. And then at the end of the session today, a general Q&A can take place. In order to help ensure that we, and indeed myself, can see the questions as they come forwards, what I would suggest is that if people can put their questions in the Q&A box by pressing the Q&A and asking a question in there, and what I would intend to do is to run through those questions at the end of each of the items and ask people to answer those questions that are raised on the presentations. And then if there is time at the end of the questions that we have from the Q&A, we will also then be able to, people can raise their hands, and I'll invite people to raise their hands to ask their question live. Hopefully there'll be enough time for that with each of the items. So if you could keep your questions and indeed those presenting keep their answers brief, I hope that we will be able to get through all of your questions. If we can't answer the question tonight, then for those of you that are familiar with the forum, we will endeavour to answer them in writing, and I'll come back to that at the end in terms of the timescale, but to make sure that we are able to address all of them, and we'll publish those answers along with this recording in due course. The intention is that the meeting finishes by 8 o'clock. And as I've said, all of the meeting is recorded. If you are asking a question, only the panel members' videos will be recorded in terms of the presentation, and your attendees and those attending are not recorded or part of that recording. But if you ask a live question, your name will be displayed. So please note that your continued presence is considered consent for your name and voice to be recorded and published as part of that process. Finally, before we move to the presentations, a poll will pop up in your browser at the close of the meeting. And it would really help us if you could just take a couple of minutes to answer that, so that we can use that feedback to make sure that future iterations of the forum are helpful and address the subjects and topics that you're interested in. So with that, thank you, and I will try and pick up on the questions as well. I know, and with apologies to you, County Councillor Claire Daunton, I'm sorry I missed you off in raising your hands, but I will move on to the first presentation, which is by Caroline Hunt, Matthew Patterson and Fiona Bradley, and is a planning policy and development management update. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Good evening, everyone. I'm Caroline Hunt. I'm Strategy and Economy Manager in the Shared Planning Service. I'm going to give you a bit of an update on where we are in terms of planning policy and the plans that are looking at the future of the North East Cambridge area. And I'll then be handing over to colleagues just to say a little bit more about next steps and also about where we are in terms of planning applications and interest in bringing forward proposals in this area. So in terms of the Greater Cambridge Local Plan, what have we done so far? So some of you will know we've done several stages of consultation so far, the most recent of which was what we called our first proposals, our preferred options for the new local plan, and we held consultation on those first proposals in November and December last year. And I'm not going to go into detail about what the proposal said around North East Cambridge, because I'm sure with an interest in the area, you already know that very well. But just as a brief reminder, it includes North East Cambridge for a new city district for a mixed-use development, including 8,350 homes in total within our planned period to 2041 and beyond, and 15,000 additional jobs, as well as a wide range of supporting infrastructure. And that very much mirrors the proposals that were in the North East Cambridge Area Action Plan that I'll also just mention a little bit about shortly. So the representations, the comments that we received to the first proposals have all been registered, and we published those on the Greater Cambridge Shared Planning website in June this year. So they are all there and available for anybody to look at and read. That's covering the whole of the issues within the local plan, everything from the amount of development we think we need to provide to meet our needs for jobs and homes, right through to the development management policy approaches that we were consulting on for the whole range of key themes for our local plan. So as well as the homes, jobs and infrastructure that you'd be very familiar at forming part of a local plan, very much we have 4 key themes that are overarching across all of those issues around climate change, around biodiversity and green places, well-being and social inclusion, and great places. And also in the summer, we updated our local development scheme. That came into force in August this year, and that includes updated timetables for both the local plan and the North East Cambridge Area Action Plan, and I'll just run through a little bit of that in a moment, and that's also available to view on our website. The LDS, as it's known for short, is something that we have to prepare. It's a formal document, and it sets out our intended timetable that we will follow in preparing our plans. So what are the next steps for the plan? We this week started a series of meetings of our joint local planning advisory group, and they will be running right through to March next year to discuss some of the key feedback from that public consultation and seek member views on the next steps for each theme. And that very much includes our strategy for the plan and the sites that we are identifying to meet our development needs for jobs and homes. And we actually have a session of that advisory group meeting later this month that will look at the strategy and the sites. We then move on to formal committee meetings in January to consider the responses received to the strategy and the sites for the plan, and we'll be asking members in the light of those representations and some new evidence that we're preparing to confirm the preferred strategy and the sites that they wish us to take forward into the new local plan, and we will then take a full draft local plan to members in summer next year, and if they agree it, then to take out to public consultation in the autumn. Just very quickly to give you a sense of the rest of the plan making process beyond that, we at each stage of consultation we very much consider all the responses that we receive and consider whether we need to make any changes to the plan, and I think it's important to be clear that the following stage, the proposed submission plan, both for the Greater Cambridge Local Plan and also for the North East Cambridge Area Action Plan, the publication and consultation on those proposed submission plans needs to await the outcome of the development consent order process for the relocation of the water treatment works, because our plans are predicated on the water treatment plant relocating if the DCO is approved. And if the DCO approves that relocation, that will provide evidence that the redevelopment of North East Cambridge can be delivered. So the LDS assumes that consultation will take place on the proposed submission plans in autumn 2024 to follow the outcome of the DCO process for that relocation. And obviously that's something we keep under review as we, in light of progress on the DCO. And the LDS then assumes that we would submit our plans to the Secretary of State for independent examination in summer, autumn time 2025. Again, that's subject to the outcome and timing of the DCO for the relocation of water treatment works. Just looking slightly further at North East Cambridge, the area action plan, having been through consultation at a draft plan stage, it's a bit ahead of the local plan, was considered by both councils at the beginning of this year, and both councils agreed the proposed submission area action plan for future public consultation contingent upon the separate DCO that's being undertaken by Anglian Water for that relocation being approved, and the AAP is now paused until the outcome of the DCO is known. In terms of the local plan, which is a little behind the AAP in its process, we will be continuing to take the local plan forwards until it catches up with the area action plan, and the local plan, as I mentioned, includes NEC as a key part of the development strategy. The report that we'll take to members in January will confirm the role that NEC is proposed to have in meeting development needs to 2041 and beyond. And then the draft plan for consultation, subject to that January decision, may then include a policy for North East Cambridge. And what the local plan can do, which is kind of beyond the scope of the AAP, is to consider some of those issues that the AAP identified for beyond its specific boundary. So things like provision of formal sports and open space that will help meet the needs of the North East Cambridge area. And then in terms of other ongoing work, so part of the work on the local plan includes updating some of our evidence base, and we will be looking at both how that applies to the local plan and whether it has any implications to the North East Cambridge AAP, and also some wider work around wider project governance. And I'm now going to hand over to Matt Patterson to just say a few words about that issue. Thank you, Matt.
Caroline. Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Patterson, so I am part of the Shared Planning Service, responsible for delivering planning policy for Greater Cambridge, including NEC. Yeah, in terms of wider project governance, obviously the planning department is responsible for pulling together the planning policy framework for the regeneration of areas and places, including North East Cambridge. But regeneration tends to be much wider than just that planning policy framework, where you have to consider what are the other responsibilities that need to be picked up to ensure that the area that we finally create and deliver supports the communities that we envisage will occupy these places, and in particular around what sort of support we need to give them to make the best of the new job opportunities that come up in these places. And that includes in the construction phases, but beyond construction phase as well, looking at opportunities to take up new employment with all the opportunities that arise through economic growth across Greater Cambridge, and ensuring we secure greater social integration and social inclusion across the area as well. And part of that is looking at how we can support new communities and ensuring community health and well-being as well, and looking at what both the councils, but beyond that, our partner authorities need to do by way of engaging early in the regeneration of these areas to secure services and facilities that support the communities in these areas. So essentially, while the AAP itself is paused, work is ongoing regarding ensuring that other organisations as well as the councils are lined up to provide those services and facilities essentially. I think that's all I need to say on that one. I'm going to now pass over to Fiona Bradley, who's going to discuss some of the current planning applications that we've got.
Thanks, Matt. Just a quick update for people on the development management side of things. And the slide that's now showing provides a visual representation of the live or almost live sites that we've got at the moment. In terms of pre-applications, we'll be seeing presentations this evening in relation to the Vitrum building, which is shown as the orange polygon in the northern part of the site, and also for the core site, which is the large green polygon towards the centre of the site. And they're both coming up during the landowner update session this evening. The city's operational hub is also at pre-application stage now, along with Merlin Place, both shown as orange polygons here as well. And we had presentations on both of those at the last forum. We have one live planning application at the moment, and that's on the Chesterton Sidings or Brookgate site, which is shown as the large red polygon to the north of Cambridge North Station. Now, the application is a hybrid application, and that means there's an outline planning application and also a full planning application, which are being considered. The outline application is for 2 commercial buildings with flexible uses at ground floor and basement parking. And it's also for 425 residential units, and that includes studios, 1 and 2 and 3 bed flats. And that's made up of 270 build to rent units and another 155 open market units. So that's the outline planning application. The full planning application is for an office building and 2 laboratory research buildings together with a mobility hub or multi-storey car park building. And all those buildings also have flexible uses at the ground floor levels, and that can provide for retail, cafe, community type uses or activation uses at ground floor level. In terms of the application, we're still waiting for the last few consultee responses to come in, and we're currently aiming to take this to the Joint Development Control Committee in November of this year. And finally, to the south of the application site, the orange polygon, which doesn't look, the purple polygon, which doesn't look too purple at the moment, that's the consented office building, which is currently under construction. And that's all for my update. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Matt. Surprisingly, in fact, we didn't. I don't think there are any questions in the Q&A for you, but in line with what I outlined earlier, we have an opportunity before the next item for people to raise their hand and ask any questions of Fiona, Caroline, or Matthew. If there are no questions, then I'm happy to, provided he's warmed up and ready, I'm happy to move to Jez Tuttle. Right, I can see one raised hand, and I think it is. Oh, is the hand raised? Apologies, I'm having to scroll because there are a number of people in the meeting. I can't see. I thought. David Yandel, you did raise your hand and then lowered it, but
I would like to ask something.
Okay, please ask your question.
Okay, it was mentioned that space or areas will be required outside the NECAP development area in order to provide facilities for the NECAP area. What areas will be required, and what will they do? What will they provide?
Thank you, David. Matthew, are you able to answer that broadly? I think it's still an area.
Yeah, so it's things like swimming pool provision and things like that. In particular, formal open space needs, so playing pitches and other facilities. So essentially, all development drives a need for new provision. Primarily when it comes to things like swimming pools, it's not just the one scheme that will generate enough need to provide a requirement for a full pool. Rather, it's looking at the cumulative impact of all the development and then deciding exactly where best to put these new facilities to best serve not just the new community that we're creating, but the existing communities as well. So we look at existing catchments for those types of facilities, and we look at areas where there's deficiency as well as good connections to sustainable transport measures, and we look at how best we can find the right location, the right spot to provide those facilities that serve everyone for the coming future. So hopefully that answers it. The work that obviously through the Greater Cambridge Plan looks at those cumulative impacts of not just growth at NEC, but growth across Greater Cambridge as a whole, right through from the current plan period through to 2041 and beyond. So it is looking towards our wider growth needs and figures, and then looking to provide facilities that are scoped and spec'd to meet those future needs.
Thank you, Matthew. I noticed that Councillor Bradnam's got a hand up, but actually a question's popped up probably for Caroline, just to comment on about the Anglian Water submission on the Planning Inspector Act, talking about Q1 2023 and programme. Can you answer that one? Thank you.
So the local development scheme has been based on our understanding of the intended programme for the DCO. And we, as I said, we absolutely need to keep that under review. The timetable that we published in the summer envisaged submission in the autumn. So you're correct that that information on the Planning Inspectorate website is an update to that. But I think your question probably needs to be passed to Anglian Water when they get to their item on the agenda, perhaps to confirm that. But our timetable is something that we have to keep very much under review, and that's what we will do as we go through the process.
Thank you, Caroline. Councillor Bradnam, are you? We've got a few minutes. Do you want to ask your question, and then I'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Yes, I just wanted to ask, in principle, could you remind me if provision has been made for green space on site, so that's informal green space on site, and formal green space, or is any element of that off site? The second thing is there space for faith, so faith space, and also is there space for a cemetery and burial space on site? Because I think, for example, neighbouring parish councils would wish to know if there's an anticipation that you're going to use our burial space for this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradnam. Matthew, can you comment on the assumptions there?
So both on the open space, both informal and formal, there's provision on site for both. There's a recognition that in terms of a lot of the formal open space provision, that will necessarily need to be off-site in the form of playing pitches, but on-site you can provide the likes of the tennis courts, squash courts, indoor facilities as well, and we'll have multi-use games areas and other things like that. But when it comes to a full-size cricket pitch and pavilion, that's likely to be much broader in serving needs than just NEC, and is better located somewhere else that then serves the wider catchment area. In terms of faith provision, The AAP makes provision for community space. How that community space is then taken up and used is entirely part of what I talked about before about wider project governance, is looking at how we can optimize the use of these community facilities and spaces and ensure that we can provide a wide range of community services within those. So whether that's healthcare, faith, third sector provision, health and well-being, I think there's a role to play, and we're certainly engaging with a wide variety of organisations around looking at a model of integrated social care and well-being that may include faith provision as well within those. Finally, on the area of issue of burial space, there isn't any within the NEC development. There will be a contribution that we will seek from developers to expand on existing burial space where that arises across Greater Cambridge. Again, it's one of these cumulative issues that we will need to address through the local plan in particular, and looking at what the cumulative burial needs will be, having regard to take up of cremations, and also looking at what sort of burial rates would be achieving, plus spare capacity within cemeteries across all of Greater Cambridge to provide that.
Thank you, Matthew. There's some there's some questions in the chat from Councillor Carla Hoffman around a little bit further detail on the space around space to walk dogs, play parks, and allotments. Can you just cover those three questions?
Yeah, so we are ensuring there is a sufficient on-site space for all play facilities, parks. The types of parks that we're seeking to provide is a wide range of parks. There'll be long linear ones. So it's really a network of different types of typologies of different open spaces that would include, we've tried to include within NEC a kind of walking loop, if you like, right around the area. You've got to remember NEC is 180 hectares of land, so it's quite a substantial walk from, if you've ever done from Cambridge North Station to say Cambridge Regional College, it's a substantial distance. So the open space network is quite substantial within there, and within the area as a whole, there'll be provision made for all different types of and forms of open space requirements, if you like, and provision for play space, allotments, and everything else. We are looking at more innovative ways of how some of these things will be provided, obviously, and ensuring that sufficient growing space is provided within all schemes and developments across the site. And it's also the open space is part of our biodiversity network as well, and looking at how we ensure multifunctional use of that open space for a wide range of provision.
And Stephen, if I could perhaps just add to that as part of the local plan, we're also looking, as well as the local informal open space, we're looking at more strategic scale open space. So not the spaces you need every day, but we're very mindful of the importance of green space to well-being, so on your doorstep, but also being able to get out into the countryside. So the area action plan talks about a new foot and cycle link across the railway to give access out to the river and the footpaths, for example. But the local plan's also looking at a number of opportunity areas for provision of new open space, strategic green infrastructure, both for public access and also for biodiversity. So there are a number of areas where there's an interrelationship between the area action plan, specifically for North East Cambridge, and some of that more strategic provision that the local plan can address more easily.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Caroline. I think we've had some comments there in the Q&A with perfect timing. So thank you, everybody. I'd like to move on to introduce Jez Tuttle from Cambridgeshire County Council, who is going to give an overview of the transport matters. Councillor Bradnam, I see your question in the Q&A. Perhaps we might come to that at the end of this item if there's time, but thank you. Over to you, Jez.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Jez Tuttle. I'm the Transport Assessment Manager at Cambridgeshire County Council, and I shall just go through my presentation. Just gives a bit of a transport overview of North East Cambridge and the Area Action Plan. Hope you can see that. There we go. Can you all see that?
Yeah, we can. Cheers.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so as I just said, this is the transport overview of the North East Cambridge area and the associated action plan. So the North East Cambridge area consists of 4 sites. Got the Cambridge Science Park site, which exists. St John's Innovation Park site, which is on the east side of Milton Road. The core site, the currently occupied by Anglian wastewater treatment plant, and the station area, which is immediately adjacent to the station Cambridge North Station. So Science Park we've got there. That's where St John's is. These are indicative, so hope no one picks me up on exact bits of my polygons. Then we have the station area broadly, and then the core site, which is currently occupied by the Anglian Water Sewage Works. Purple shows the North East Cambridge Action Plan area as a whole. As you can see, it's split pretty much by Milton Road in the middle. We'll come on to that in a bit. So the North East Area Action Plan. Why do we need an action plan in transport terms? Well, we've got 4 different sites being promoted by 4 different developers, and we need to ensure that they are comprehensively developed as one. So we need to ensure the comprehensive redevelopment of all sites such that there is a seamless transition between the individual areas in terms of connectivity. So we want it to be as one site rather than several sort of isolated sites. We need to deliver the correct, well, the planning authority of the county needs to ensure the delivery of the correct balance of jobs and houses, such as the area maximises the internalisation of trips and reduces external car trips. Now, this is very important because we need to ensure that the minimisation of any external car trips, and we want the trips to be within the area itself. Ensure that all areas have adequate connectivity to wider passenger transport, walking and cycling routes to minimise external car trips. We know there's going to be external car trips, but what we want to do is minimise those by saying, well, where are people going and what can we deliver and what infrastructure is on the cards through other mechanisms to get people from there where they need to be, and indeed from the North East Cambridge area to elsewhere. So what we've done is we've taken a trip budget approach to this development as a whole, North East Cambridge, and the question might be asked, what is a trip budget approach? So identifies the number of motor vehicle trips will be accommodated on the existing highway network via local modelling, and this is set as a trip budget. So what we've done is we've looked at Milton Road, we've looked at King's Hedges Road, and we've looked at the junctions, and we've said how much traffic can we feasibly force through here in the future until the network gets to the point where it cannot take any more vehicles. And that's effectively the trip budget. We applied the trip budget to the proposed development quantums throughout the area to identify maximum car mode share from each of the development types, housing, employment. So what we're doing is we're saying, well, okay, if we can only get so many cars out, what's the percentage of car drivers that needs to happen from each development type? So where do we need to get to from where we are at the moment? So it gives us a good baseline. How will it work in practice? What we are looking at doing is reducing the external vehicle trips by creating neighbourhoods within the site which encourage walking and cycling as the primary trip type. So connections across Milton Road, connections between the employment and the houses. This will actually encourage people who are working there to live there. So if you can walk to your place of employment, easily, then that's got to be a bit of a bonus. easy access to existing strategic walking and cycling routes. If you want to go into Cambridge, if you want to go elsewhere, you need to be able to get there. And again, we don't want people using their cars. We want them to walk and cycle. Easy access to existing strategic passenger transport routes and interchanges such as Cambridge North Station, which exists, and obviously the guided busway, which runs to the south of along the south edge of the site. So the infrastructure delivery plan is effectively answered the question, will existing infrastructure be sufficient to actually allow us to achieve these mode shares that are quite challenging? Well, the answer is no. There will be a requirement for developer-led delivery or funding towards significant new infrastructure to deliver the required non-car mode shares, and it is significant. New strategic walking and cycling routes into the site from the northeast and west. I mean, some of these might be the greenways. The GCP are looking at promoting, and they're going through the sort of consultation process at the moment. Delivery of strategic passenger transport interventions such as the C2C, Camborne to Cambridge, Cambridge to Waterreach bus corridor schemes, and indeed the Eastern Access schemes. And also a robust and comprehensive travel planning. And that's the end. Thank you.
Cheers, thank you. I can't see any questions in the chat. I think Councillor Bradnam has raised her hand, but actually I have questions in the Q&A. So if I can just Councillor Bradnam, if I can come back to the Milton Country Park question. David Yandel has asked a question about the Science Park and Innovation Parks areas are already developed. Why are you referring to them as being further developed?
Do you want me to answer that one anyway? I think because the AAP promotes both of them for intensification of their existing uses, really. The aspiration of both sites, including the Cambridge Business Park, which is slightly different from St John's. All of those landowners are looking to intensify uses within their schemes, within their site areas at this point in time, and therefore they will add to the traffic issues, which is why we need to take account of them and the work that the County Council does.
Thank you, Matt. Jez, Charles Jones asked, do you envisage greater train numbers in future to connect Cambridge?
Is that number of passengers? We certainly would, yes. Number of trains, I mean, that's something which would have to be looked into by, so I suppose there's a difference. So more passengers might mean that more capacity is needed. And that's something that certainly would have to be looked at by the train operators. I think the only one that stops there at the moment is Govia Anglia. I don't think the others stop there at the moment. Certainly cross country don't. But there may be in the future, other companies might say, well, actually, we've got fare buying customers that want to get to where we're going, so therefore we'll stop our trains. But we can't promise that at the moment because we're not the rail service providers.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carla Hoffman asked a question about how will cars be accommodated for people working out with Cambridge? So obviously the people who work outside of the city, how are you addressing that? And maybe worth covering the point around people who travel out to work, but also the implications of people living here who might travel out, or people travelling in from outside.
Okay, so I'll cover the people living there. The hope and the aspiration is that people won't live there if they're not working on the science park or in the action plan area, because the neighbourhoods are specifically tailored so that the jobs and the houses are within certain walking distance and easy access. Furthermore, the residential developments will have very, very limited car parking. So it will basically discourage people who do have a car and do have to commute out of the city from actually living there, because there won't be a space for them to park their car. And that's another thing that we're trying to do to encourage the community to build as a work and residential community, i.e. lots of internal trips by walking and cycling. In terms of people who are coming into the city, the interventions that are there already, such as the guided bus, Cambridge North, are going to be complemented by other interventions, such as the Cambridge to Camborne busway, the busway down from Waterbeach, and other strategic interventions which will come forward as part of the Cambridge Eastern Access. So again, workplaces will not be providing lots of car parking. So therefore, people who do work or do live outside will be encouraged to live within the walking and cycling distance of their work, rather than actually, we're trying to minimize any external trip. So by motor vehicle. And the first way you do that is to try and actually get everyone living and working in the same place. And that's our goal. And the trip budget is going to be very stringently set and monitored. So we simply can't provide lots of workplace parking, and we simply can't provide lots of residential parking, or those people who just use their cars.
Thanks, Jez. Can you comment, as two related questions, I think, one from Hazel Smith and one from Andrew Martin, about that issue of car parking, but also how are you envisaging managing down private vehicle ownership, and I think a concern about how the extra traffic will use existing roads?
I think vehicle ownership's an interesting one. We're not telling people not to own a car. If you say someone wants to commute into the NEC area, we're not telling them not to own a car, because we know that people do other things with their cars and they go shopping, etc. What we're saying is, don't travel into this site by car. Leave your car at home. That's if you're actually living within the Northeast Action area, we're saying, well, actually, this is a relatively low car development. So if you want to own a car, it's probably not the best place for you to be living. And, we do that by the interventions such as having relatively low parking for residential. In fact, the proposed level of car parking for the existing application on the station site is actually very little car parking at all. And it's operational car parking only. So effectively, we're saying, well, if you want to live on that site, you're not going to have somewhere to park your car. If you want to work on that site, don't bring your car in, come by another mode. And that's the whole way we actually reduce the car journeys and actually achieve the trip budget we're looking for. In fact, actually, we don't want to achieve the trip budget. We want to achieve far better than the trip budget, but we've got to be realistic.
Okay, as questions are flying thick and fast now, is the proposal to put a tunnel under the A14 to access Milton Country Park still on the table? The country park is already at capacity in terms of footfall. That's probably a question for Matthew Patterson, I would have thought. Pat?
Yeah, it is for me. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my video back on. Yeah, I mean, our proposal is still to put a tunnel underneath the A14 that would not just link to Milton Country Park, but we would hope the GCP Quiet Ways route, and provide a good cycle connection right up to Waterbeach and beyond. So that is a key connection that we would like to see delivered.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hoffman asks, will there be residents parking in the surrounding areas to prevent effectively people driving too close to the site and parking nearby in existing residential areas? Jez, I don't know whether you can comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we're obviously going to have to look at, because naturally some people are going to try and beat the system and think, well, there's some nice little side streets I can park down there. So yes, I mean, that's going to have to be part of any comprehensive plan, is to look at where where commuters might park and might, because some commuters will walk quite significant distances from their car, so long as they can take the most of the journey by their car. So yes, that will be part of it.
Okay, and further question about how are you approaching, two questions actually, about how will you approaching home deliveries and servicing? What's the approach there for looking after the site really in terms of service and service access.
Yeah, home deliveries is an interesting one because we've been talking about putting home delivery hubs like you get at sort of stations sometimes, where parcels can be dropped out in the periphery of the site and delivered within the site by, you know, maybe autonomous robots, you know, other means that don't mean that big lorries have to come into the site. So effectively that's the way we'd envisage that happening, because, you know, we don't want big lorries and trucks going into the site. We want to minimize that. So they would be located in strategic locations, you know, on the periphery, so that the last mile, as it were, could be done by some other more sustainable means.
Thank you. How do you, this is probably a question, I don't know whether actually Caroline wants to comment on this or Matthew, but how do you prevent long distance commuting from areas such as Chatteris or March, where housing is cheap? Will the housing on North East Cambridge be as cheap as Chatteris and March?
I think, as Jess said, you know, people will continue to travel to North East Cambridge as they will other sites in and around Cambridge for work, and some will continue to live further away either by choice or due to house prices. But that's where the wider transport provision in the area becomes really important. So, for example, you don't need to actually drive into North East Cambridge to access it, because you could, you know, leave your car further out. You could get on the park and ride. You could get on the busway from some way out. And you know, obviously there are also going to be consultation from the Greater Cambridge Partnership around proposals to very much improve bus services and so on, alongside a congestion charge that's just been agreed by the GCP board for consultation. So, and that's mentioned by in the chat as well. So there's you know, there's a lot of things that all come together, and I think it's worth saying that as part of the work on the Greater Cambridge local plan, our transport evidence identifies North East Cambridge as, you know, the best and most accessible location available to us in Greater Cambridge, because of it's by the station, it's at the, you know, it's at the end of or along the you know, the St Ives to Cambridge busway. There's a new busway being proposed from Walter Beach. It's on the Chisholm Trail, the cycle trail. You know, more cycle provision being proposed. So there are, you know, a really good range of options for people to get to and from this site without needing to use their car. And that's really what we've all got to be thinking about much more, isn't it, with the climate emergency and so on, as we move into the future. So, you know, this is an opportunity, we think, because of the really good quality of the public transport that exists already and is still with more still to come.
Okay, thank you. I'm conscious of time. We've got a few 2 or 3 minutes left. I think there's a question about car clubs and plans for electric car charging. Jez, I don't know whether or not you can talk about, I suspect that we need to bear in mind the delivery timescale for some of this, and the fact that the majority of development is still probably several years away. But can you talk about the county's approach to electric car charging and car clubs?
Absolutely. I mean, electric cars and charging is something which is a must-have on new developments now. You know, they've got to cater for them because more and more people are using electric cars. So that's a prerequisite. We will be requiring that for residential developments, but being obviously mindful again that we won't have a lot of residential car parking spaces. So these will be the hubs that people can park in that need to park. You say the workplaces will have electric charging points in much a similar way as there are at New Shire Hall. In terms of car clubs, that will come under the umbrella of travel planning. So yes, there would be car clubs. There would be pool cars for use on the site for people who do need to go out on day trips, because we understand that, you know, you might want to go out in a car to a supermarket. You might want to go out for the occasional trip, but if we're telling people that we are discouraging you to own a car, then we've got to provide something to do those short trips, and a car club is exactly what that does.
Thank you. We've got 1 minute left, and I'm just conscious of there's a number of questions here that if we can't fully meet in this particular section, we will answer. I think there's a couple of questions about whether it's sensible to connect Milton Country Park and the kind of capacity issues that I think is probably best answered, because it's more of a planning discussion point than through Jez. I think there is some concern and some assurance around blue badge holders. Jez, I wonder if you can just clarify that there will be provision within the site for those mobility impaired people holding blue badges. Is that?
Yes, there has to be. I mean, that's what when you've got a residential development, I think one of the first things that is being looked at, or the only thing that's really being looked at in the residential application, is blue badge holders and possibly a space for a delivery van. So that's effectively what we're looking at. So no, we're not trying to discriminate against anyone. There will be those spaces, and the local plan says we have to put them in, so they'll be there.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, I wonder if you can just clarify. I mean, certainly, if I can use my position from the chair just to comment, one of the things that there's a number of comments here concerned about deliveries and servicing and so on, and it's fair to say one of the things that I know my team and the County Highways team are looking at really carefully is how using kind of European examples, for example, we can understand and better accommodate properly deliveries and the entire kind of delivery process as it's evolving through careful design of the streets, because you're right, people generally, some delivery vehicles you can see virtually looking abandoned in the street whilst they're being they're offloading. And I know that the teams are looking quite carefully at how we can design out, if at all possible, those scenarios with very clear reference to and recognition of that important thread. So thanks, Jez. I'm going to move on because I'm trying to keep everybody to time, and at the moment I'm 1 minute late. If I can introduce now, please, Karen Staples, who, on behalf of Anglian Water, who I understand is going to give a brief overview and update of the proposals for the Anglian Water. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Good evening, everyone. As Stephen says, my name is Karen Staples, and I work on stakeholder engagement for the Cambridge wastewater treatment project with Anglian Water. Sorry, just 1 second. I just need to. My slides aren't in tune with my my buttons. Just wait 1 moment. There we go. Yeah, so as people be aware on this call, the Cambridge wastewater treatment project is about relocating the wastewater treatment plant at Milton to a site over near towards Horningsea in order to enable the regeneration of this area. Probably worth just mentioning for the attendees on tonight's forum who are members of the community working group. These slides are really just a high level update, and so they will be sort of running through things that we showed you at the community working group back in June, I believe. So they're not new to you. What I would say to those community working group members is that, and while we've been quite internal facing over the last couple of months of preparing documentation for submission, and we have also responded, we've also been drafting letters for response to all of the written consultation responses we've got from the likes of our parish councils, Save and Hill, etc. So we will be responding in full to you shortly, alongside with the publication of our consultation summary report. So there is more information coming out to you that is over and above tonight's presentation. So for those who are less aware, just sort of to recap over the project timeline. So we started looking at this and doing a phase 1 consultation back in the summer of 2020, where we sort of introduced the project and looked at site selection. Then in summer 2021, we went to our phase 2 consultation, where we shared initial designs, provided some traffic and access options, and sort of highlighted our plans for mitigation. Then in October 2021, we submitted our environmental impact assessment scoping report to PINS. They published their opinion, opinion, and then that led us to consultation 3, which was spring this year, spring 2022, where we sort of shared that further detailed design and also our mitigations with you. So we're at this sort of point now, sort of autumn 22, where we're due to release our consultation summary report to our stakeholders to update on where we are following phase 3 consultation and prior to submission, and as was mentioned earlier, we're sort of looking at a sort of late 2022, early 2023 submission. So just referring back to the question that I think it was Charles mentioned, we have sort of looked to seek to align those dates with the council dates, bearing in mind that the committee is in Jan 2023, and we'll obviously, as Caroline said, we'll be making sure we're sort of reviewing and aligning ourselves with that. So whilst we're not releasing this month, we are very much sort of putting our final pieces of documentation together to do that submission as soon as possible. And so just recapping on phase 3, so I can sort of give a high level view of some of the key changes that we've made following stakeholder feedback at that consultation period. So consultation was held between 24th of Feb and 27th of April. We released some concept designs in that consultation, but more importantly, phase 3 consultation was really to get more into the detail. So as well as producing information on the site itself, we also gave details on the connected infrastructure, the pipework and the outfall, and really the key point around phase 3 consultation was to release our preliminary environmental investigation report, which was our first environmental impact assessment of the project, and putting forward those proposed mitigations to stakeholders to get that feedback. Some of the feedback we've had from stakeholders were sort of around sort of key areas that, that probably unsurprising really. There were the key areas around landscape and visual. So for example, there was a lot of comments around planting and screening, asking us really to sort of look again at the sort of impact that the site and the plant within the site will have on the area, and asking us to see whether there's the opportunity to improve the planting and screening that we're proposing around the site. There was also comments around the relationship between the facility and the recreational facilities that we're providing. So, if there's a perceived odour issue, that's going to be in line with our proposals for recreation in the area, and also comments around ensuring that measures for safety, but also importantly for maintenance of those recreational areas are included in our management plans. And the gateway building, there was some feedback on gateway design, half positive and half asking if we'd do more to integrate that building more into the landscape. So with the sort of feedback we had back, we have sought to review, design post phase 3 consultation to mitigate that visual impact. And probably the sort of key 3 things from this slide that we've actually done to improve that visual impact is basically sought to reduce the ground levels, so reducing the ground levels between 0.5 metre to 1 metre across the site, reducing the heights of buildings and reducing the massing of buildings. And that table there just gives us sort of an example of sort of where we're heading in terms of reducing heights of buildings. But probably the 4th bullet point is sort of more the direction of travel, where we're continually looking to see how we can to mitigate that impact. So for example, in our worst case, our highest building is our boiler stack, which has a worst case in our 24 metres, but we are still doing modelling to see whether we can bring that down. So really the key message is we are continuing to ensure we can mitigate. And what we'll be providing in our consultation summary report, and then further detail in our submission, is some new photo montages post phase 3 consultation that shows that difference from phase 3 consultation to application point. So it makes clear, it gives a clear illustration of sort of what that impact looks like visually. Further on, looking at the landscape master plan, comments were made around the balance between mitigating with planting and ensuring that we're in keeping with the landscape character of the area. So particularly comments from our heritage landscape and ecology officers at the councils. We've looked to review that landscape design to make it more in keeping with the local landscape. So we've looked at making the woodland more rectilinear. We've looked at planting not only young trees, but how we can plant some semi-mature and heavy standard trees, and how we can look to plant trees such as birch and poplar. So really just sort of getting that that landscape plan more in line with something that would be more acceptable to the community. And the gateway, again, we've done some new, reviewed the design on the gateway again to make it less of a visual impact, so increasing the screening, reducing the building, and we've done this on the building, and also increasing the planting around that building and having it more sitting within the landscape, and also done similar to the car park, so really looking to increase planting and use these earthwork bunds to just make it sit more within the local landscape character. Other stakeholder feedback, it was a large consultation with a large response. We had, I think it was over 890 feedback forms and over 1,600 visits to our digital engagement platform, and some really good feedback and some really lengthy feedback from stakeholders, which has given us a lot of food for thought. But some of the sort of other key themes that came up were carbon, odour, traffic and construction. Looking at carbon, there were comments around sustainable materials to be used, and hopefully at this point stakeholders will understand that a key part of our project is to make sure that it is sustainable, and we do use low carbon materials, low carbon concrete, etc., and really sort of ensure that we are minimising the amount of carbon used. And then the other comments around carbon was in respect of the assessment that a lot of stakeholders are obviously eager to see and to understand. In the DCO application, there will be an assessment on carbon that will assess carbon in construction of the new site, decommissioning at the existing site, the land use change and the operation of the new site. Demolition of the old site isn't included. However, because of the linkage between this project and the site that will be released, we will be doing an assessment of the wider effects of a strategic assessment of the wider effects of the relocation of the Cambridge project. So that is something that will be released with the DCO application. Just going on to odour, we're continuing to finalise our odour modelling. We've also been working hard on our odour management plan, particularly the processes that will be involved in engaging with the community with any issues that may occur, and as well as looking at how we engage with our environmental health officers. And also we have been sort of carrying out some site visits. So during the summer we did some site visits with landowners, as well as a site visit with some representatives from the local community. We went to our existing site to sort of show and illustrate how odour is management on the old site and how that will be the same and how it will differ on the new site, and just to sort of help to sort of illustrate more the different odour levels and the odour measurements.
Stephen Kelly here. I'm just conscious of time. Have you got many more slides? Because I'm conscious there'll be some questions probably.
Yeah. Absolutely, thanks, Stephen. And it was a challenge to make this as short as possible, but yeah, I'm nearly done. So traffic, again, we had feedback on the access to the site, the work we've been doing since, been looking at our traffic mitigation measures, and also construction. The sort of key things for construction really was many stakeholders had highlighted a concern at our vent shaft 4, which we've now moved and will only be a shaft during construction, and then will be taken away, and then the land will be reinstated. And also been really working on our management plans for construction traffic, and also for our community liaison plan during construction. So in summary, so the key takes post CON3 are, we've sought to reduce visual impact through reducing heights of buildings, massing of buildings, and increasing planting and reviewing the gateway building. And the other part of the sort of key reviews are ensuring that we have a detailed carbon assessment to release stakeholders at DCO application, removing the vent shaft, and also continue to develop our mitigation plans, particularly our community liaison plan, which we will be engaging with the community and other stakeholders in the coming months. So just in summary, on my final slide, Stephen, the key points on this are really our next steps for engagement are to release our phase 2 consultation report. We'll be doing that in the next month or so, and looking to submit end of 22, early 2023. But really, the point of this slide is to show that it's the top end of a longer process. And obviously, once we, if we are to be accepted and we go into that process, we are looking at sort of 12+ months through submission to the point of having the project discharged. And our aim and our timeline still aligns with our plans to start construction 2024 to have it operational by 2028. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Karen. And before I just move to the Q&A questions, Charles Jones, if you're there, I'm sorry I missed your raised hand. I don't know whether it was in connection with the previous item. If you can confirm that it was, what I'll do is under the general questions and answers, I'll take your question first, if that's okay.
No, it was. I'm sorry, it was a legacy. I made the point earlier. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Charles. Karen, I've got 3 questions of the Q&A at the moment. The first is from David Yandel. Does the HIF grant carry a time limit? How does any time limit control your timetable? Do you have to complete the development by a particular date?
Yes, the HIF funding does have a time limit, and those dates that I've shown are in line with it, and we are obviously engaging with the Homes England on a regular basis, so they are aware of where we are with the project. So yes, we do have it, David.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bradnam asks, we desperately need a fixed connection to Fen Road, Chesterton. Since you're already providing a new pipeline between the existing and new sites, please can you consider providing a new pipe from Fen Road, Chesterton? There are approximately 600 residents who rely upon septic tanks. Are you able to kind of comment or explain where Anglian Water sit on that? Thank you.
Yeah, I can comment, and thank you for the question, because I know this has been raised whilst we were out at consultation as well, and it has been something that's been looked at and hasn't moved forward, and I don't think we're in a position at the moment to move that forward, but we are engaging with Fen Road residents, and we are trying to align what we're doing, but there are no plans at the moment for that.
Okay, thank you. David Yandel, another question. Why has the processing of imported sludge on a remoter site not been considered? This would reduce operational traffic.
Yeah, thanks, David. I mean, we did have that comment come through from community stakeholders during consultation, and I think the thing is that our current site, the whole purpose of our current site is to take imported sludge from the Cambridgeshire area. That's the purpose of having the bigger plant to do that. And the thing is, it's sort of a key part of our service to our customers, and our satellite sites can't provide that. They're not the size that can do that, and therefore that is sort of a key element of the current wastewater treatment plant, and would need to be a key element of the new one.
Thank you. Councillor Hoffman asked a question about, will the building only accommodate site-specific staff, or will there be office space for Anglian Water staff in general?
No, the building space is for, well, it's for operational staff, and it's also for the staff that we have currently at our Milton site that are involved in the logistics and transportation of at the wastewater treatment plant. So it's those existing staff. We don't intend to have any new staff coming to that site.
Thank you. And another question from Councillor Hoffman: will there be storage tanks for stormwater on the site?
One of the key benefits of this new site is we have the storm tanks, but we also have the storm tunnel that will actually, so the new technology, if you like, on this site is to have this storm tunnel that's of a large capacity, much larger capacity than we'd have in storm tanks, that can hold that storm water more effectively in the tunnel. So that is sort of the sort of key benefit, really, one of the key benefits of this project.
Thank you, Karen. There's a question from Ian. Why is there no plan for a pipe from Fen Road? I think what might be helpful, given the nature of the response, is whether or not we could capture that with a written response, because I suspect it's going to take longer than the minute or so that we've got, unless you're able to expand.
No, I'd be very happy to take it offline and back to our Fen Road team, and I'll get a proper response to you, and yeah, we'll pick that one up offline. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I'm just looking. I can't see any more. Charles Jones has raised his hand, and Charles, I wasn't quite sure whether you'd asked another question, but you've asked to speak. So can I ask you to ask your question, please?
Okay, fine. I just want to make the observation that Fendison pumping station is due to have a new rising main between Fendison going right underneath the Fen Road community and into the Milton Works. And Anglian Water say this will be delivered sometime either later next year or possibly a little bit after. So the question how Fen Road is dealt with stands, and it's possibly independent of the wastewater treatment relocation project.
Charles, thanks for that comment. I think, Karen, if you can take away the narrative, as you say, and the questions from Ian and I think the councillor on the provision of a new main to Fen Road, that would be helpful. I'd like to thank you, but I'd quite like to move on if I can, keeping us to time, and introduce now some presentations from landowners or potential developers. Simon, I think, is going to lead off with a presentation around the Vitrum building with potentially some of his team. Simon, if you've got a presentation to share, and perhaps you might also introduce your team. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. There we go. Hopefully that is now visible as full screen. Brilliant.
Not yet.
Not full screen yet. There we go. It's slow. Brilliant. Hopefully visible now. Thank you ever so much, everyone, for your time. Simon Gartshaw from Candor Consulting, and working with the team on behalf of Breakthrough Properties, looking at the Vitrum building, developing plans for the Vitrum building on the St John's campus. I'll hand over now to Adam Vladarczyk Black of Breakthrough Properties. We'll just say a few words about Breakthrough Properties, and then it'll be for Jakob and Henrik of Henning Larsen Architects to talk through their approach for the future of the site. Adam.
Thanks, Simon, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you all today about our exciting projects at St John's Innovation Centre. I'm just going to give you a very quick run through an introduction about Breakthrough Properties before I hand over to Jakob from Henning Larsen, who will take you through some of our initial design concepts. Breakthrough is a property that was formed 3 years ago between two companies, Tishman Speyer, a global real estate investment firm, and Belco, a life sciences venture capitalist. And our mission is quite simple. We want to create sustainable communities that enable scientists, researchers, entrepreneurs to make life-changing discoveries, and that's it in a nutshell. The way that we want to do that is to assemble a portfolio of Class A life sciences properties and leading technology centres around the world to support scientific innovation across biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, medical device technology, agriculture, nutrition. And a point to note is that Breakthrough are a long-term holder. We develop and we operate our assets and a long-term vision to create a network and an ecosystem. And I just thought I'd show a couple of slides of some of our projects that we've got on the West Coast in the States. Here is the latest rendering of Torrey View in San Diego, and there's another shot there internally of the sort of products that we aspire to achieve. But I'll now hand over to the Henning Larsen team and Jakob, who will take you through some of our design concepts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both Simon and Adam. And we're pleased here on behalf of Henning Larsen here. My name is Jakob Kurik. I'm a Global Design Director of Henning Larsen, to take you through the next couple of slides about the vision building that we are, on behalf of the wider team, are carrying out for Breakthrough Properties. At the slide to the lower right at your corner, you also see where our site in, how it sits into the St. John's Innovation Campus, and also for us to understand the wider context. It's really important for us to, no matter what we do, that is something sits and understands its surroundings, but also not only understands it, but also gives something back to the wider society and network, not only within the St. John's campus, but also beyond the borders of that. Yeah. We come with an international approach, coming with a Scandinavian mindset, that for us it's really important that what we put forward is both a modern and a very flexible workplace, not only today, but also into the future. And it becomes an inclusive community that belongs to have a sense of belonging, not only to the individual, but also to the larger organizations, and also sitting in with campus as such. Yeah. It's also important to us to stress the workspace design, the workspace of tomorrow, coming out of pandemics, working with life science facilities and so on. How can you see yourself as an individual, larger organization, to make sure that we're creating innovative spaces, labs in this instance, not only for today, but also for the future to come. Yeah. Sustainable design is the core of what we do at Henning Larsen, and within the wider team here. It's not only about the energy performance of the building, but it's also the social sustainability that is into our mindset, but also the carbon footprint and so on. So no matter what we will do in design initiatives in this instance here, it will be about promoting better well-being, performance, but also promote biodiversity. So including the landscaping within the buildings and the wider setting is important to us. For us, it's really important that the buildings not only are kind of an enclosed entity in itself, but it actually becomes an active and transparent building and setting as such. It not only takes space, but also gives something space. It's about connecting to the green, connecting to the St. John's Innovation Campus. And again, I said, even beyond the boundaries as such. So we're not only designing for the doormat and inwards, we're also looking outwards. That's really a core of this design. A part of this, you can see, and some of the things that I've just been through is that now we turn up to implement them into our visions, and sort of understanding the context about the campus in itself, understanding the transparent ground floor at the lower left, but also look into the flexible workspaces at the lower right. Then you have the triangle at the top right corner, where we, coming out of Denmark, we've been working with the food pyramid, what to eat a lot of and what to let us less of. We now transform that into a material pyramid of sustainable solutions, to make sure that we're taking the right solution at the right point of time when it comes to material and to spaces and so on. And in the middle, you see a diagram that shows that we really want to embed the landscape and the biodiversity not only around the building, but also into the building. Next, please. And as a conceptual sketch, what this is kind of trying to illustrate, we see the landscape at the lower floor, the ground floor. We see that is being the master plan, the wider St. John's campus, the city, continuation of the green coming into the building. At the same time, we see the building on the edge, on the frame, of the massing, you can see that starts to step up and push back to create not only scale and spaces, but also activating the buildings all the way around. So it doesn't become like a very solid and interior building, but a building that speaks at all seasons throughout the year and from all sides. We don't see this building will have a front and a back, but we will have 4 fronts as such. Yes, please. Before going into the future, it's also super important to us to go back in the past. And of course, that here we also mean what is the context that we are within? How can we make sure that we create a narrative and design narrative that links back to the past and kind of brings that into the future? We are quite humble when it comes to the legacy of Cambridge and the city centre and the universities, but also looking into some of the recent work that is done in Cambridge. As such, we would like to be inspired and also look to the materiality and the texture and kind of carry that on into our design. So there is a strong link there. The same applies when we come to the recreational spaces, the green spaces, the kind of, you can say, the lawn in many places. Coming from the more historical buildings, the green and outdoor spaces tends to be more formal, but still a very important space for breakouts, briefing spaces, and so on, a part of the identity and the gravity, where some of the more recent projects globally, the green spaces, they become more informal, more interactive, but also being able to have a more formal presence as such. But it is, you can say, an identity of the building, the people that belong to the building, and about having a healthier lifestyle, but also breakout spaces and so on. So workspace, learning space, so it's not only for indoor, but also breaks out. So there's a seamless interaction between indoor and outdoor. That is very important for our design for the Vitrum building. Here you see a kind of a snapshot of images. It's not our design per se, but this is some of the elements that we would like to carry on into our design with inspiration from the legacy images, but on have an understanding of scale, proportion of spaces, buildings, depth into a facade, integrating landscape, some parts being more formal, some parts being more informal, and all throughout it became changing its look and feel and appearance as you walk around the building. But again, as also said in the beginning, having the seasons to kind of excel and being expressed into the building with the push outs and the push ins and so on, announcing entrances and breakout space and so on. It's very important to us that we have a very communicative building throughout. Amenities, breakouts. Here you see a couple of examples of some of our designs, but also other designs, how we can integrate the landscape in an informal way and make this transition between inside and outside very seamlessly. And hopefully you can see that also something that we really like to give something back to the city. We would like to create public destinations within this building at the outside and the periphery, but also at the part of the ground floor building. Yeah.
Jacob, can I just check how many more slides you've got, just because I've got another presentation and I'm keen to allow some time for questions.
This is the last slide. Just to say, this is a very preliminary image of the massing and such. You can see the bike road path that goes across the highways. We see a very important building that becomes a gateway, an entrance, an introduction to the St. John's Innovation Campus. And of course, there's more to be expressed. Here you see only a simple white model as such. Hopefully that gave you a good expression about where we are, but also what we like to achieve.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the presentation. What I'll do is, if I take the presentation on the core site from Francis Wright, I think, or James Cox, and then we'll come back to some questions, and perhaps you can join us in a second once we've had that second presentation. Thank you very much, Jacob. So, Francis or James, are you ready to go?
Yes, it's going to be me. I'm just going to first and then followed by James. So I'm just going to see if I can get what I need on the screen first.
About 10 minutes, and I'll try and keep you to it if I can. Thank you.
Yes, so let's see if I can get that right. Thank you. So can you see the screen now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Perfect. So I'm Frances Wright, and I'm from Town, one of the master developers for the core site in Cambridge North East. And I'm joined by James, who's going to speak to you a little bit later on about our plans for meanwhile use on the site. But my role today is to remind everybody about our festival, which is a really key part of our engagement this year around our developing ideas for the core site. Some of you may remember that earlier in the year we were going to have a one-day festival, which due to Omicron became a series of webinars. And at those webinars we launched our vision for the core site, set out 3 promises linked to people, city and planet, and shared the values informing our work. And we were due to have this festival, 2-day festival, back in mid-September, and we needed to postpone that because it was just before the Queen's funeral. And so it's taken place 29th to 30th of October, if you've missed that on your screen. And we're hoping that many people in the local community will join us either on that Saturday or Sunday. It's an opportunity to meet all of the professional team involved and find out more. There will be an exhibition zone, but there will be plenty of really interesting talks and discussion going on, as well as design workshops supported by a whole range of activities. So hopefully there will be something there for everyone. And if I just scroll down here, Shirley Primary School, quite as near as we can get to the core site. And here you can find out all of the programme for the festival, and you can see lots of different discussions with different contributions going on. So I'd really recommend that you go have a look at the festival. You'll find it at peoplecityplanet.com, and there are a selection of events for Saturday, Sunday, and some pre-festival events as well. So I really would encourage you to have a look. It should be an event that's suitable really for everyone, including young children. We've got plenty planned for that weekend. So I hope we'll have an opportunity to meet at the festival, and we'll be reporting back at a future forum, I think, about some of the things we learned and what we've got planned in terms of further engagement for next year. So I think that's from me. James, do you want add anything in relation to the festival?
No, I was just going to say, I think you've done a good job of summarising it there. I've pasted the link to the website that Francis is showing in the chat. So it'd be great if everyone's able to have a look and to come along to the variety of talks and panels and workshops, as well as try some of the nice food and drink and other activities we've got planned as well. So I'm now going to talk through our kind of emerging meanwhile proposals for the core site. As Francis mentioned, we're working with you and I on behalf of Cambridge City Council and Anglian Water. The core site is a very large site within the northeast Cambridge area. It's outlined in red there. On the image on the right hand side, you'll see where the core site is outlined in white. There is a star, and in that location is where we are looking to bring forward our meanwhile uses, which will come forward ahead of the main planning application for the core site, and will be on the site for a kind of 15-year period through the construction phase of the wider core site. Meanwhile use is really important to both Town and you and I, and we're really excited to be looking to bring forward some meanwhile uses on the core site.
James, sorry to interrupt. Could you possibly make that full screen? Because I think it's not yet full screen, and might help people see a bit more clearly. Thank you.
Apologies. Has that worked?
hasn't worked yet for me, but
No, not yet.
Is that working okay?
no, I don't. It hasn't changed. Okay, I mean, I keep going because I'm conscious of time, so I don't want to hold you up. But and the presentations will obviously be available to view online if you need to zoom in. So keep going. Thank you. Oh, that's better. Thank you.
No worries. So we're really excited to be kind of talking about the meanwhile uses today. We think that they provide a really great opportunity during this very long construction period to begin to start a community on the core site. This is something that we're very conscious of on such a long-term project, is that how do we start it on the front foot, and how do we make sure that the project starts in the right way. And so I want to talk through today some of the kind of vision and objectives. We'll then talk through a number of kind of anchor initiatives that we are exploring at the minute before talking about some milestones for delivery. So as mentioned, really looking forward to starting to build the community on the core site. We see the meanwhile as an opportunity to also activate the site and support some early placemaking along Cowley Road. We see it as a really valuable opportunity to test some different ideas and approaches and some different uses, which we can then look to implement within the wider project as it comes forward. And we're looking to build on the kind of existing experience of both you and I in town of delivering meanwhile projects, some of which are on the left-hand side there. So I'm going to talk through 3 anchor initiatives, the first of which is an affordable workspace. There's an indicative image on the left-hand side. The idea is that we'll bring forward an affordable workspace, which is a kind of mix of maker spaces and office spaces. And this will be made exclusively available to startups, SMEs, social enterprises and charities who are working in tackling the climate emergency. This is something which really closely aligns with our promise on the project to the planet, and one of our values, which is living within our environmental means. I think there's a lack of affordable space of this type in the area, and this space would allow those businesses to come together and to collaborate and to innovate, and again transfer the knowledge into the core site project in the future, and possibly into the wider northeast Cambridge area as well. We see this as kind of having wider benefits to the city and helping to cultivate a new an emerging sector. The second anchor initiative I'm going to talk through is a sustainable food hub. We're talking with 2 local organisations at the minute who specialise in food innovation. And the food hub will deliver a logistics facility by and large for both organic and wasted food, alongside incubator kitchens for local SMEs, not-for-profit and local people working in food. Might be spaces where people are able to come and attend cookery classes, or whether they're able to hire it out to progress their own kind of food-based business. The secondary part of it is whereby food would come into the sustainable food hub, both organic and wasted. It would then get boxed up and then be distributed around the city to those who need it in electric vehicles. And the final anchor initiative is a modern methods of construction factory and training centre. This will be a purpose-built factory for off-site manufacturing of small kind of micro homes in partnership with a local social enterprise. The factory will be used by local young people or people that are not in employment and training, and it will offer them a patient employment and kind of training program to facilitate future work within the construction industry, and mentoring over a kind of 1 to 5 year period, and something that we are really excited about. In terms of key milestones, we're looking to commence the planning design later this year before planning submission early next year. Hopefully we'll achieve planning permission by summer of next year start on site in the autumn, and then there's quite a short construction period to complete either by the end of next year or early in 2024. So I hope that was speedy enough for you, Stephen.
James, I was just about to interrupt you and say how much longer have you got, but no, well done. Thank you very much. I'm just going to look and see if we've got any questions that relate to either of the last two presentations. I think there are some which are related to general questions. Just looking at a number of questions from David Yandel, which I think relate probably more to Anglian Water than this. Right, a question from David Yandel says, a question to landowners, by what percentage do you consider your sites adjacent to the present plant will be raised by the relocation? I think I'm assuming that's in terms of the improvement in the in the values of the sites. James, yours is on the site, I think, in terms of the wider piece. I don't know whether Adam might be able to comment on that particular question, or whether you're able to comment on that question at this point about the effect of the relocation of the water treatment works in terms of the improved position of the value of the building.
Yeah, sorry, we haven't given that any consideration yet, to be honest, Stephen. But it's something we can absolutely look into. But we don't think it will necessarily have a material effect. And obviously the U&I scheme that's coming forward's going to be great for the area and great for the community, which will should benefit everyone. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm now scrolling down because there's a number of questions. Councillor Hawkins asked a question for Breakthrough Properties. Your landscape proposal looks good, but I wonder if you considered using green walls and not just planting on terraces. I don't know whether or not Simon or Jakob or one of the team can comment on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to sort of lead off in that. Obviously, we're in a relatively early stage, but nonetheless in pre-application discussions with officers to develop solutions that obviously provide biodiversity net gain and meet, the highest or some of the highest sustainability targets. So that's the sort of wider picture, but I'm sure Jakob may wish to comment a little further on that particular point as well.
Sure, can do. And we are looking at integrating the softscape and plants both horizontally as well as vertically. But we're very focused on putting in places and sort of both horizontal and vertical where it has an added value, and not only for the sake of having the green in. So we will focus on the biophilic performance of the building, but also looking into the overall energy performance and the building as such. And of course, it's also important for the individual persons to have something nice to look at, to smell to, and so on. So the embodied carbon in that respect is also important. So we will put things up that require very little maintenance in terms of water. We can recycle the water in that sense. But also you can say that the potential more concrete or structure you will need to have to carry the load of the plants. At the same time, we are also creating shelter and lee on the building is a less solar impact, but it's a more, you can say it's a more complex calculation as such. So we will put them where they have an added value, not only for the user but also for the building.
Thank you, because I think you've also answered Ian's question about the cost in terms of embodied CO2.
At least I try to.
Insofar as you can. I've got a number of questions coming thick and fast. Question for town: what will the planning submission consist of in March 2023? Will this be for the meanwhile uses or an outline application for 5,600 homes? Well, I certainly don't expect it to be the application for 5,600 homes, but hopefully Francis or James can confirm that.
Yeah, it will just be for the meanwhile use only. It won't be for the wider core site application.
Thank you. And James, whilst you're there, on the food hub, there's a question from Councillor Bradnam about is it a replacement for the food hub at Orwell House or an additional facility?
So it's an additional facility. Understand that the facility at Orwell House is the Trussell Food Bank, which is a kind of separate charitable operating model, whereas we're working with a number of local partners to distribute both organic and wasted food around the city.
Thank you. James, I don't know if you can answer the question on the course site, any improvements to Cowley Road, which is currently in a poor condition?
It's a really interesting question. I think during the meanwhile operation, I think it's something we'll definitely have a look at. In this initial proposal, it's unlikely that we'll make kind of substantial improvements to Cowley Road, but it's certainly something that as we move forward over that such long period, we'll look to do, and might even look to do in a meanwhile fashion to test some different approaches.
I've got I'm trying to scroll down. How will the food site, course site Cambridge Festival be publicised to the wider community? Francis, are you able to answer that question, or James, is that something that you can do?
Yes, I can definitely help you with that. We will be delivering 18,000 leaflets to local households in both North Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire, as we have done previously in September, in fact. So we will be doing a rerun of that, and it will be appearing on social media, radio, hopefully in the local press, both in terms of some press coverage, but also advertisement. So we hopefully will reach as many people as we possibly can, and we'll also be contacting local organisations who we've been in contact with before for engagement, to let them know and encourage them to contact their own members about it.
Francis will also be out and about on a cargo bike
yes,
the week prior, with a few of us on the team trying to drum up attendance at strategic locations around North East Cambridge and Cambridge as well.
So very true. If you see us on a cargo bike, come and say hello.
Okay, thank you. Matt Howard's got a question, especially effectively supporting the values and mission, especially of town. However, concerned about the choice in this case is being made to displace the sewage works onto a greenbelt space. I wonder, have any of the stakeholders or Stephen, the GCP itself, conducted a stress test for wider project viability against UK interest rates? Just to give a bit of an overview on that, clearly on this journey and the very live set of circumstances around the UK economic conditions, but particularly borrowing costs as well as material and labour cost, is something that the Shared Planning Service is keeping a weather eye on. And of course, as the strategy progresses, the viability and deliverability of the vision that we've set out for North East Cambridge and the infrastructure is something that we're very conscious is potentially impacted by these current economic conditions, and indeed the timescales for delivery of some of these elements clearly may well mean that a number of economic cycles may pass during the life of them. So I'm sure you and I and Anglian Water and their team, as well as Simon and Adam and so on, are acutely conscious of the conditions and funding, and we'll deal with these on a site-by-site basis in terms of what they deliver, or the impacts in terms of delivery. I'm looking at whether there are further questions. I see David Yandel has a statement around, I think I'm seeing that, David, as a statement around sludge management, and a question that I might come back to around the tunnel in the general piece, but I can't see that I've got any further questions for the recent round of speakers. So thank you very much to all of you on those two presentations on the two projects. Looking at my clock, we have 12 minutes before we are due to finish, so it does give time for, if anybody's got any further questions, for you to raise your hand. In the meantime, can I ask Matthew Patterson on the panel to comment on the issues and concerns highlighted around the capacity of Milton Country Park and the question about why would we then put a tunnel connecting the country park to the site when there's already a substantial footbridge, and I think a concern about that actually just feeding the difficulties in terms of capacity. Matt, can you comment on those matters? Thank you.
When we started out on the AAP, one of the things was obviously we highlighted that the area itself is very constrained in terms of it's hemmed in by the railway, by the A14, by Milton Road, by the guided busway. Part of the work of the AAP was to look at how you could knit in the development at NEC into the wider area, and that was by making further more sustainable connections through to neighbouring communities and areas, and in particular looking at further bridges, further underpasses and the like, to ensure that we could deliver on the aspiration of the place being a connected but cyclable and walkable neighbourhood. And therefore certainly the tunnel under the A14 is not just about connecting to Milton Country Park, but connecting to the wider area. We are, as part of the planning service, looking at the local plan, looking at a wider green infrastructure network from Impington to Histon to Milton, and looking at how we can connect all of our strategic development sites and ensure that everyone has fantastic access to green infrastructure, to a network of biodiversity areas, to fantastic walking and cycling provision across the area, to ensure all of the communities are connected in that way. And therefore we are still talking with the Milton Country Park about the capacity issues there, and their aspirations obviously to put in further lakes and to grow that. We think a good sustainable connection under the A14 would facilitate that as well, ensuring people that currently access it by other means can do so more sustainably as well, and ensure that actually we might be able to reduce some of the car parking on the Milton Country Park site and turn that over to proper country park as well.
Matt, thanks for that. I noticed that some people have had to leave, but thanks for that. And you've also answered a question that I didn't unfortunately put to you earlier about engagement with the Sporting Lakes Trust. So thank you for doing that. There was a question right at the beginning, in the absence of anyone raising their hand that I can see. There was a question at the beginning from Councillor Bradnam about acoustic barriers for Milton Country Park as a Section 106 contribution. Are you able to shed any light on that particular matter?
Yeah, and you know, we have proposed a sound barrier along the A14 to deal with the mitigation of the impact of noise from the A14 on development in northeast Cambridge. The easiest way to do that is to mitigate at source, or as close to source as possible, and a sound barrier along the A14 is therefore proposed by the AAP to deal with that. It would necessarily need to look at reflection and the like, and whether it requires a sound barrier on both sides to ensure that the noise isn't reflected over into Milton and doesn't result in adverse impacts on other communities. So there is further work that needs to be done in that respect, and further engagement with Highways England on that as well.
Thanks, Matt. I don't know if Jez is still with us, but yes. I think there was a question from Jenny Gawthorpe Wood around the Sustainable Travel Zone timetable and delivery and its relationship with the NEC delivery will mean a greater need for buses, notwithstanding living and working in NEC, and how do you see that happening? Can you just comment on that? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the sustainable, yeah, we've got a bit of an issue at the moment, which is that we've got the Sustainable Travel Network coming forward as, you know, a thing that the county are promoting, and then we've got the problem with Stagecoach and, you know, their problems they're having with financial issues. But sustainable, growth will be the trumping card, as it were. And I know that the CPCA are looking at the bus services that Stagecoach might cut and re-franchising them. Yeah, I mean, the two will go hand in hand. I mean, in terms of the a bus network's got to be delivered for the, for the Cambridge access. I won't call it congestion charge, but the Cambridge access anyway. So, that will sort of fan out into other places as well, into North East Cambridge and into the rural routes that might be needed to serve North East Cambridge. So I think the whole thing is very much, they're very much together in synergy with the North East Cambridge. Whether bus services come online before North East Cambridge is built out is probably going to be the case, because we're talking about quite a significant build period for North East Cambridge. So bus travel is likely to be enhanced far sooner, hopefully, than North East Cambridge starts to get well established. So yeah, so the buses will be there.
Thanks, Jez. Looking through the questions or the comments in the Q&As, as I said, I can see David Yandell. The rest are Councillor Bradnam's, and then I think the point about Milton Country Park being at capacity. I think I heard Matthew talking around the wider work that the local plan is looking at in terms of strategic green infrastructure and linkages into that, recognising the pressure that further growth will put on Milton Country Park. But I'd like to move on. I've just seen a further question. I'm conscious I've got a couple more minutes only. Linda Worth has asked about active travel, please, not just walking and cycling. You refer to use of the guided busway, which is a bridleway. The mere way is a byway. Inclusion of vulnerable road users on new provision is essential. The local transport defines active travel plan as walking, cycling and horse riding. Do you want to just comment, Jez, on the approach to accommodating all non-motorised vehicle users in terms of the approach that the county is following, particularly on the city fringes and in relation to North East Cambridge? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think there's probably two sort of not sides, but two facets to this. One is the commuter traffic, which is what we're trying to remove the cars from the roads during peak commuter times. So that's the angle I've been taking all through, which is basically why I've been saying about walking and cycling, and bus travel and everything else. Very few people are going to go to work by horse, I would have thought. But leisure, going to the other sort of facet, is leisure. Obviously, leisure routes are a key part of anything. In fact, the greenway routes that we're talking with the GCB about are looking at bridleways as well for the leisure purposes. So yes, bridleways are a key part of leisure infrastructure, and will be considered when we're looking at if we're looking at putting a new cycleway in, can we put a bridleway next to it? What does that do? We're particularly keen not to hard surface rights of way bridleways and then almost shove horse owners out. We need to sort of have the things in tandem. But yeah, just to clarify, most of my comments today have been talking about the need to remove cars from the road and therefore walking and cycling in a commuter sense. But obviously there's a whole other facet out there, which is the leisure, which does include the sort of bridleways and the horse riders.
Okay, thank you, Jez. David Yandell's asked a question about town as an organisation. I think, given timing, we might need to just provide a bit of a response, perhaps with a quote from town about how they see themselves, although they've got a fairly full website. So I'd like to, mindful that we're committed to finish at 8, I'd like to thank everybody, all of the speakers and all of those people who've taken the time to attend this forum, and indeed to contribute to the questions and the conversation. I'd like to thank you all for attending tonight. We will aim to have the video and the questions, the written questions and responses on the website inside the next 10 days. Questions and feedback and comments can also be sent to the addresses that you can see on the screen now. Please register on the webpage for the contact list so that we can send you emails and keep you up to date about the forums. The next meeting is proposed for the 22nd of March next year, goodness me. Please check out, or continue to check out, the webpage with the web address that you can see there for any further information on that. So that leaves me with 2 minutes to spare to just thank you all, wish you a very good evening, and to hope to see you again at the next forum. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.